A nice and a fulfilling day, Iconius Misas. Is it really possible that the Byzantine world of business and economics can be played like a game? Is it like a chess where every strategic moves constitute someone's checkmate and advantage? Or is it like a volleyball where teamwork and coordination are highly demanded to manage? Hence, to know more about the game theory of economics, let us watch this.
Game theory is the study or science of strategy. It studies situations involving more than one participant and in which they are interdependent. In economics, it provides tools for analyzing situations in which firms or companies labeled as players make interdependent decisions. And because of this interdependence, companies must consider their competitors' potential decisions and strategies when making their own. And also, game theory helps companies by increasing the probability of reaching maximum profit and reducing loss. Game theory is used in many fields, not just in economics and businesses, but also in psychology and political science. Examples of game theory is in chess, the other player's move constantly influences your strategy. And if we would apply it in economics, an example would be when multiple companies compete with each other, the other company's actions are influenced by its competitors in such a way that when its competitors lower the prices of their products, they will be forced to compete by lowering the prices of their products too. So they will be not left out in the market or hindi sila mapag-iiwanan. But in that way, both companies will share customers and will earn a little money, which we don't want. However, if someone understands game theory or market theory, he knows that there's no reason to change his products, but instead do something that will differentiate his products and stand out in the market. Because if they lose in the so-called game or in real life, the market, they will bankrupt.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alizarian Maningtim, one of the reporters of Group 5, and I will discuss the game and its related parties and ingredients in game theory. So, what is a game? Game is the object of study in game theory. It is any set of circumstances that has a result dependent on the actions of two or more decision makers. Yale economics professor Ben Pollack knows that a game has three basic components, which are players, actions or strategies, and payoffs. So by this, there is any interaction between players who share common knowledge of the rules, available strategies, and possible payoffs. So the most popular example of game in a game theory is Prisoner's Dilemma, which will be tackled later. So let's go to the related parties and ingredients in game theory. The first one is players. Just like I said earlier, they are the decision makers in a game. So they are the main elements in game theory that need to be able to interact with each other in some ways. So the example of players are business managers, companies, general public, government bodies, and such. The second one is the actions or strategies. So it is a complete plan of action or any options that the players take in a game depending on the circumstances that might arise in a game. So in this element of game theory, players are always making choices. So based on my research, some examples of strategy in game theory are pure strategy, dominant strategy, and mixed strategy. The third one is payoffs. So payoffs is the outcome of the game that depends on the selected strategies of the players. It motivates players to choose the best course of actions and strategies. So payoffs can be in the form of money or non-quantifiable like emotions, such as a number of years of happiness. The last one is Nash equilibrium. It was first proposed by and named after the mathematician John Nash. So Nash equilibrium is a situation in which a player will continue with their chosen strategy after taking into consideration the opponent's strategy. It also states that there is always a move that benefits all of the players equally in a game.
In game theory, a primary distinction is made between those game structures that are cooperative and those that are non-cooperative. As we will see, the fundamental dynamics surrounding the whole game are altered as we go from games whose structure is innately competitive to those games where cooperation is the default position. For non-cooperative games, since the inherent nature of the game is to have competition, non-cooperative games has limited institutions of cooperation. In this game, Cooperation has no value because they will not be able to increase their profit if they cooperate with others. Let us remember that a firm or a company's goal is to maximize profit. So in this case, they are solely focused on payoffs to the individuals. What matters the most is the amount of profit that they will get through their strategies. Now, let us move on to the next one. Cooperative games add extra dimensions since we now have to think about the payoff to the whole organization. We also have to look at the positive and negative externalities that these actions may have on the whole system. Of course, if we want to increase our profit, we have to decide on joint actions to execute which will result to collective payoffs. Cooperative game is an example of non-zero sum games because it's either every player wins or every player loses. Moreover, payoffs are positively correlated, which means if one player increases their profits, other players will also be able to increase theirs. An example of cooperative games is a cartel, which will be further discussed later in the report. It will include its meaning and how it benefits the entities.
The prisoner's dilemma basically provides a framework for understanding how to strike a balance between a cooperation and a competition. It is a useful tool for strategic decision making. Prisoner's dilemma is a situation where the individual decision makers always have to choose an incentive to choose in a way that creates a less optimal outcome for an individual as a group.
You'll notice here, if prisoner 1 has to build a belief about what choice prisoner 2 is going to make in order to choose the best strategy. If prisoner 2 confesses, he will get either 8 or 0, and if he lies, he will get either 10 or 1. It can be easily seen that prisoner 2 will choose to confess, since he will be better off. Therefore, prisoner 1 must choose the best strategy, given that prisoner 2 will choose to confess. Prisoner 1 can be either to confess or lie. The rational thing to do for prisoner 1 is to confess. Proceeding inversely, we analyze the belief of prisoner 2 about prisoner 1's strategy, which gets us to the same point. The rational thing to do for prisoner 2 is to confess. Therefore, prisoner 1 confess and prisoner 2 confess is the Nash equilibrium in this game. When a Nash equilibrium exists, it can be utilized to forecast the results of the limited games. Additionally, the elimination of dominated strategies approach can be used to identify the best equilibrium result by avoiding unreasonable Nash equilibrium and allowing us to locate optimum Nash equilibrium. On the downside, there's the problem that arises when dealing with a Nash equilibrium that is neither socially nor ethically optimal, and where efficiency may be subjective, as in the case of the prisoner's dilemma, and where the Nash equilibrium does not satisfy the requirements for being Pareto optimal. Additionally, the likelihood of several equilibria makes it harder to forecast how the game will turn out.
Nash equilibria is achieved in a game when no player has no incentive for deviating for their own strategy, even if they know the other player's strategy. It is a set of strategy that players act out with the property that no player benefits from changing their strategy. Used to illustrate that decision making is a system of strategic interaction based on the actions of the other players.
You'll notice here, if prisoner 1 has to build a belief about what choice prisoner 2 is going to make, in order to choose the best strategy, if prisoner 2 confesses, he will get either 8 or 0, and if he lies, he will get either 10 or 1. It can be easily seen that prisoner 2 will choose to confess, since he will be better off. Therefore, prisoner 1 must choose the best strategy, given that prisoner 2 will choose to confess. Prisoner 1 can either confess or lie. The rational thing to do for prisoner 1 is to confess. Proceeding inversely, we analyze the belief of prisoner 2 about prisoner 1's strategies, which gets us to the same point. The rational thing to do for prisoner 2 is to confess. Therefore, to confess is the dominant strategy. Prisoner 1 confess, prisoner 2 confess is the Nash equilibrium in this game, since it is the set of strategy that maximizes the prisoner's utility, given the other prisoner's strategy. So, the generalization of the game, the prisoner's dilemma is not always presented as we have seen in this case. Payoff for each set of strategy will vary, depending on each person.
Dominant strategy is a situation where one player has a superior tactic regardless of how other players act. We have strictly dominant strategy. This is the strategy that always provides a greater utility to a player no matter what the other player's strategy is. We also have weakly dominant strategy is a strategy that provides at least the same utility for all the other players' strategy and strictly greater for some strategy. Principle of elimination in dominant strategy. If one players are rational, then they should never use dominant strategy, since they can do better by picking another strategy, no matter what other players are doing. If you eliminate the weakly dominant strategy of the game, an equilibrium in that simplified game became the equilibrium in the original game as well. However, this process might delete some other equilibria of the game.
A good example of elimination of dominated strategy is the analysis of the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. In this game, as depicted in the adjacent game matrix, Kenny has no dominant strategy, but the Japanese do have the weakly dominating strategy, which is going to north. Since only one of them is dominant strategy, there is no dominant strategy equilibrium. We must then proceed by eliminating dominated strategy. As we've already mentioned, for the Japanese strategy, go north. Weakly dominated strategy goes south. Therefore, we eliminate the strategy go south for the Japanese, who will go north. Now that we only consider the Japanese going north, Kenny's strategy go north is strictly dominant over the strategy go south, which will be eliminated. Therefore, north-north is the weak dominance equilibrium. However, as it was mentioned before, it can be easily seen that the game has lost its strategic nature.
Let the games begin. Are you ready for it? Quote by Taylor Swift. In the world of economics, entrepreneurs would really need to play the game without gaming over despite not being able to pull the strings of supply, demand, and government intervention to win over the hurdles of price variations. Hence, in a monopoly where a very few industries establish themselves inside a particular market, they tend to walk in eggshells to protect their barriers as prices vary outside their controls. Further, in oligopoly, where a number of players inside the same industry compete, their pricing decisions tend to influence each other. Say for example, Jollibee and McDo's popular rice and chicken meals price is currently ranging at 105 to 120 pesos. If a new entrant in the fast food industry would be able to reach or exceed the quality of Jollibee and McDo's good while offering a lower price which the consumers would highly possible to patron, Jollibee and McDo could resort into lowering price to gain back their customers. Then again, this new entrant would offer a lower price until the cycle rolls up to the point that these players will make less or no money at all. A literal showdown indeed. That is why some entities have thought outside the box and landed in the spot where every one of them would benefit and formed a cartel where basically they associate to avoid the very unfortunate price showdown. However, cartels violate Republic Act 10667 or the Philippine Competition Act because it eradicates the healthy competition inside the market.
Limitations of game theory. Game theory is based on the idea that individuals are rational agents acting in their own best interest. We may enter a Nash equilibrium state that in every strategic game, there is a move that benefits all of the players equally. It might not be the best individual outcome, but the best it can get for the group as a whole. It can happen in certain circumstances, but not in others, depending on the circumstances which game theory cannot explain. The main problem with the game theory is that it is assumed individuals are irrational agents. The importance of game theory. First, the game theory shows the importance to duopolies of finding some way to agree. It helps to explain why duopoly prices tend to be administered in a rigid way. Second, the game theory also highlights the importance of self-interest in the business world. Third, game theory tries to explain how the duopoly problem cannot be determined. For this, it uses the solution without saddle point under the constant sum two-person game. Fourth, further game theory has been used to explain the market equilibrium when more than two firms are involved. The solution lies in either collusion or non-collusion. Fifth, prisoner's dilemma. In game theory points toward collective decision-making and the need for cooperation and common rules of rule. 6. A player in a game theory may be regarded as a single person or an organization in the real world subject to decision-making with a certain amount of resources. The strategy in game theory is a complete specification of what player will do under each circumstances in the playing of the game. 7. The importance of the payoff values lies in predicting the outcome of a series of alternative choices on the part of the player. Thus, perfect knowledge of the payoff matrix of player implies perfect predictions of all factors affecting all the outcome of the alternative strategies. 8. A game theory is helpful in solving the problems of businesses, labor, and management. And last but not the least, there are certain economic problems which involve risk and technical relations. They can be handled with the help of the mathematical theory of games. To sum it all, the application of game theory can aid businesses in making strategic decisions both inside and outside of their own walls, especially when facing off against rivals. Additionally, it offers a general framework to explain and examine how people act in such strategic circumstances. And that would be all. Thank you.
And that is the trivia report of Eco News Mix for today. Together, let us play minds, not hearts, as we work smart in the world of Mart. This is Econ News Mix.